There we go. Whoops. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Make It Monday. Yep. Make It Monday, Amy and Jim from Amy Sews, Amy Buckman Sew and Quilt. You can find Jim at
the original Sew and Quilt Expo.
That's right. So, and what you're hearing now is Yeti the dog. So I apologize. You hear a little extra snorting or yelping in the back. You know.
At least it's not us.
Come on, Yeti, go. There we go. Don't want him eating threads in my sewing room. Hello, hi, everybody. Franny. Everybody's popping on. Franny, Robin,
and Julie.
Julie. Perfect. So today's about buttonholes. And there's a lot of information for buttonholes.
Yeah.
We're going to show you two different kinds of buttonholes today. And people are getting back to garment sewing.
Which is nice.
Which is lovely. As far as Jim and I are concerned, that's the way to go. But we know buttonholes are the tell.
Yeah, buttonholes and zippers.
And buttonholes and zippers are the tell. I just came back from a B2B trade show for fibers and fabric and machine stuff, and it was really good. And the samples were impeccable, and I was so pleased to see garments back hanging up.
Yeah,
I was like,
nice.
It's good. So, and again, excuse the printer in the back. It's just all kinds of stuff going on, getting ready for the cruise. Yeah. Getting ready for the cruise. So, perfect. All right. So, good afternoon. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Barbara.
All right. So, let's talk a little bit about buttonhole feet first, right? Okay, so, it doesn't matter what machine you own, you have some sort of a buttonhole foot. This is the most basic of buttonhole feet. This is a 5 millimeter from Janome. So this would be a mechanical entry-level machine. So
they're all pretty much similar.
They're all pretty much similar, right? So this is the one for the Brother Luminaire. Oh, wrong camera. So this is the one for the Brother Luminaire. So let's talk about pieces and parts. And all these pieces and parts are the same for the Janome. Bernina has its own foot, which is totally Bernina. Right, it has a foot and then an attachment for a buttonhole, because not everybody does buttonholes, right? So you have a little slide here in the back. That's where you put your buttonhole, your button. Now that is an extremely large. It's probably one of the largest in the industry to do a buttonhole that big. Mm-hmm. What buttonhole would I be doing that big? Probably a purse or a bag, or maybe a single belt loop or a single coat button, maybe. Yeah. But anyhow, you just collapse this around your button. That is the indication of what size button you want to be. Now, with buttonholes, you're going to test again, and retest it, right?
Save your scraps when you cut out your garment.
This little wing right here holds a stabilizer bar. And the stabilizer bar, I have it on the Janome. I'll show you here in a second. Actually keeps, like if you're doing satin, silks, cotton lawns, things that are slippery, that stabilizer bar really helps keep those two layers together so they don't shift. This is where it snaps on. Now this little A+ sticker, the Brother Luminaire reads that for an automation situation, which we're not going to get into, right? And then there's
brand specific.
There's a little tiny hook in the back, if you can see that, and that's for doing a corded buttonhole. And a little hook in the front for doing a quarter buttonhole. And I'm going to show you how to do one of those, even though it's a little challenging sometimes with this angle and this direction. So that's the basics of your buttonhole foot, right?
Yep.
So the buttonhole foot I have on, this is a Janome Skyline S7 midline model, right? Mm-hmm. You can see here, there are two pieces of metal right here, right? Yep. So this is the stabilizer bar, and the stabilizer bar piece comes off. It just sits on there, right? And it goes through this guy. And that's the same with the Brother. A lot of other models have the same situation. I think Pfaff and Viking still use that wheel, right? The little wheel that counts.
They also have that too.
Right. Yeah. So
it's almost like putting your fabric in an embroidery hoop.
Right. And speaking of that, all our garments are done in a jig and embroidery machine for commercial work.
Yeah.
Like when they make your clothes, nobody sits and does buttonholes. There's a big jig. They slide the front of the shirt in, they push a button and it embroiders all the buttonholes at once.
Well, if you think about it, on a buttonhole is embroidery because it's a satin stitch.
It's absolutely embroidery. So I'm not going to use the stabilizer. So let's Joanne's with us. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about prepping your fabric, Jim. This is
Okay.
where you're the master.
Oh,
You are. I'm telling you, your garment
Well,
work is impeccable.
thank you. What I always like to use is a fusible, quite often iron-on backing, like I use for embroidery. Ones that look like interfacing that'll wash out with one wash. But I prefer the iron-on one because if I use the sticky, sometimes with humidity, etc., different fiber contents and the friction and heat generated from the needle going through the fabric may cause the needle to build up adhesive and make it sticky and break my threads.
Right.
So I like to use a dry adhesive, basically an iron-on. And I put that on the back of all my fabric whenever I do the placket of a buttonhole or a shirt, a garment, whatever. And that way, it's almost like putting the fabric in an embroidery hoop when I do my buttonholes.
Right. So you're not using sticky embroidery stabilizer.
No, I'm
you're
using the iron-on.
a good iron-on dressmaker interfacing.
No, I'm using a good iron-on embroidery stabilizer in the back.
Oh,
I never put interfacing in my buttonholes.
okay. All right, because chits are it's faced anyway to some degree, right?
Yeah, I use like a self fabric facing for that.
Right.
Because usually we overcompensate for our interfacing because we don't realize that every time you use an iron-on interfacing, that the adhesive that's when it's activated and bonds to the fabric adds another layer of weight. So you have to get undersize your interfacing to get the right sizing for your garment.
Well, that was a lot.
Yeah. Sorry.
We knew it was a lot.
Interfacing in.
I know. Joanne said that she used buttonholes to weave fabric through.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
That's a great idea for an embellishment. And
Well,
it's a great
top.
And it's a great way to use buttonholes if you're not a garment maker.
Yeah.
Right. Jim and I are just sitting here talking about making a quilted jacket. So I saw a ton of those.
In that too.
It's going to require something. So
and buttonholes and batting. Interesting.
It's going to be interesting. Yes.
Hi, Doris.
So Doris, I think Doris, you're the one that asked the question about buttonholes getting hung up right on the edges.
And quite often what I'll do too is that, especially if I'm working on a knit, I'll put a topper on it and like heat away or something. So that way, if it is like a loose knit fabric, it'll keep all the threads in position and nothing getting caught on my foot or my needle. And when you're going to do like your bound buttonhole, whenever I work with a knit, I like to use a woven interfacing, and that's iron-on, but I float it on the back side. I don't fuse it in place.
Okay.
I just take a square of it like interface or stabilizer, just float it with the adhesive side against the back of the fabric, sew my buttonhole. Then when I take it out, I'll trim all the the interfacing close to the stitching, and then fuse it in place. And it's almost like putting cords through it. And you have to give more support to the knit fabric.
Right. That's awesome. So Doris, what machine were you working with? I think you said a baby lock, but I could be wrong because I want to address that issue because she had getting over the hump issue on the fold of your fabric.
Mm-hmm.
So let's roll back.
Yeah. And it's actually, Doris, the iron-on stabilizer I like to use is an iron-on wash away stabilizer, whatever brand you happen to like.
Right. So we're not brand. Oh, so she is a luminaire. All right. So this is a whole different discussion because you have a way to make very easy buttonholes. But the buttonhole, you can see the difference in the length of these buttonholes, these buttonhole makers, right? Brothers is a good 1.5 inches longer. The longer it is, the more stable it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same buttonhole foot you'll find in the midline Genomes all the way to the M17. It is the same. And then you may have a small adaptive buttonholer if you have a 5mm mechanical machine, right? So let's talk about that. So the first problem you need to understand with the Brother Luminaire, you see these little pieces right here? That goes up over your ankle, right? It goes up here. When you snap this on, I'm pretty sure this has to go up over your ankle and then snap on. It's not going to be the same for the Janome. So that's the first thing you need to look into with doing the buttonholes. I'm going to talk a little bit about starting on the edge of that. So the first thing I do is I pull out my tray. Push, Amy. Come on. I can't get it open. I shut it too tight. Dead silence. Jim can't get it open either. Mom, hurry. That's so bananas. What did I do? I closed it so tight. It should separate.
Yeah.
Ain't that something? What the heck? Oh,
Here
there
we
we
go.
go.
I almost say this is when you call your dealer.
I scared me. I'm like, I broke it. I was getting ready to yell for Zach. I'm like, I broke the buttonhole foot. So the first thing you're going to do is put the button in your little guide. And again, it's a guide. You don't have to have a button in there. You just need to pick the size. This little lever right here is more of a lengthen or a shorten.
Kind of like a calibration to make sure.
Yeah, to make sure to make sure your satin stitch isn't super dense or super long. Some people have that. The brother doesn't because they want you to do it automatically in there. So I'm just going to snap. Before I snap it on, let's talk about quartered buttonholes. So Jim, what would you use a quarter buttonhole for?
If I was working on a knit fabric, because I want to give it a little more support, because if you do like a basic zigzag on a knit, it's going to stretch with the knit fabric as it stretches. So this is kind of a way to keep it contained.
Right. Or a coat button.
Yeah.
It gets a lot of stretch and pull and a lot of use. So
if there's a lot of stress, yeah, you definitely want that.
So I have the cord in half and I just hooked it over the front, and then I'm going to pull, hooked over the back, and then I'm going to make sure they don't twist, and I'm going to snap these in the front. Now, every manufacturer has a little different rendition of this. See the threads right here? So this is a stability thing. So if you did want to make, like one of those quilted coats, because there'd be some stretch in there because it's all pieced fabric and all of that. Make sure my thread tails are out of the way. And then everybody has a gizmo up in here that you pull down, pull it down. It's behind your needle threader, all the way down. And it has to be behind this catch. That's how the machine knows to be turned around, right?
Yeah.
Every machine is going to stitch a little differently. Some go forward first, some go backward first. This is almost a manual operation. So we're going to talk a little bit about just some troubleshooting. Okay, so this is just white denim. I'm not real worried about it, but I want to show you how the cording works. And on the particular buttonhole for the Janome, I have these lines right here, which shows my needle position. You would mark the front of your shirt with a 1/4 inch line, or how far in you want your buttonholes to be. I'm using red thread for your visual pleasure today. And this heavy cord, this is that spaghetti thread from Wonderfill. It's a little heavy, but I want to be specific with what we're doing. So what's going to happen, I selected my buttonhole, and it's going to go backwards first. What you don't want to do is sew through the string. And I'm going to stop it to make sure. Now, this is the thing, you can stop it, but I can't pick my presser foot up or it'll reset the buttonhole. In the midst of me yakking, I didn't get, oh, there goes my cord. I had to get my cord in the right spot. I was kind of forcing around. Here we go. I would use a matching thread color if you can, DMC floss.
Yeah.
A couple thread lengths, whatever you want to call it. Let it tie a knot. Raise my presser foot, and I'm just going to go at the back and just kind of undo that loop that I had in the back of that. Okay. And so I don't want to cut any threads yet, because you can see I still have this loop here. I'm going to gently pull.
Nice.
Nice, right? So if that is matching, you're not going to see that. And then right here, you can crisscross these and tie a knot, or you can just pull those tails right up inside your buttonhole. But you want this cord to pretty well match. So now when we cut this open, we're going to show you different ways to cut open a buttonhole. This is not going to stretch or flex.
Yeah.
So let me do one without.
And it'll keep its shape with wear.
It'll keep its shape, absolutely. So now I can
And I need to point out too that Amy's using the start-stop button on her machine.
Yeah.
Because that way you're keeping your buttonhole being sewn at a consistent rate of speed and not varying with your foot pedal, which is why your buttonholes don't look lopsided.
Right. And I'm not touching anything, hands-free, because anytime you stop, push, pull, apply pressure, that changes how many stitches it thinks it needs to do.
Yeah. So you'd actually distort your buttonhole
to make the whole buttonhole. Don't get sick on it. And you can see it right here in the back, you know, how it touches that bar. And now this buttonhole is stretchy,
Yeah.
right? And you can see this is much thicker and raised. And so it's
Mhm.
a little more
More
luxurious,
professional looking.
more professional. Like I love me a good bound buttonhole.
Yeah.
And my friend Bernie, God rest her soul, she was a sewing mentor. You know, she taught me how to make this. We should do a bound buttonhole one day. I do them in embroidery now. I have a little pattern I designed to do bound buttonholes in embroidery. So we should show that. So that's the difference between a standard buttonhole and a regular buttonhole. Right. When you're done, put your little gizmo up inside where it belongs. Remember, this is your adjustment. If you have one of these, it's your lengthen and shorten the bars a little bit. And yes, can you go to your stitch length and stitch width and change it? If it appears and it's not grayed out, you can change it.
Yeah.
Because if you want more space between your buttonholes, less space between your buttonholes. Let me see if I can shove this over here for a second. All right, you guys visit with Jim for a minute. I'm going to move the machine. I don't want you guys to get like dizzy.
We're fine. Yeah.
Dizzy. Yes, we don't want to get dizzy. Let's see, how bad is this now? Almost. So you can
Not
see at the
bad.
bottom. That was pretty good for just guessing.
Yeah.
So you can see at the bottom here, I have the ability to adjust the bar distance and the bar width.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot, but you can fine tune that, because if you're sewing with a super thick button, right?
You want that width to be wider then, right?
You're going to have to make room for that in that buttonhole. So it's just by dropping your button in the back of the gizmo doesn't mean it doesn't know how thick that button is.
So it may not fit.
So you may drop the button in, pull that bracket back a little bit, take your button out because you're going to need a little extra length for the thickness.
Yeah.
Especially a good designer button, you know, like a big fancy button. Some of those acrylics now are really, really thick. All right. What do we got going on, James? Anybody talking to us? Oh, there is a difference between machine to machine to machine.
Yes.
You may own 5 machines and only use 1 machine for a buttonhole.
Because you're going to find out that's your favorite machine to do a buttonhole on. Yeah.
Not all buttonholes are created equal on every machine.
And now, as you get a more advanced machine, it seems like they have so many different variations, and really, it's like the stitch pattern they use.
Right.
Because some even do like a crossover type of X's as it goes down for more decorative look.
Yeah. So Joanne says sometimes she'll stitch it over twice.
Yeah.
Which means it's a no touch situation. You just kind of push the button again and go.
And you're right, Joanne, too, because sometimes when you do that twice, you're doing the bar tack twice. And usually the bar tack looks fine the first time, but when you do a bar tack over a bar tack, it gets really thick.
Right.
And quite often not as pretty.
And one of the problems that Doris was having, here, talk to Jim for a minute.
Move the camera again.
Move the camera one more time. How'd I do?
You did good.
Pretty good. Look at that. I'm almost good at this. So when you have the buttonhole foot on, let me snap this on real quick. If I believe so, her conversation was it was getting choked up at the edge here. So a couple reasons. You figure this seam right here, not only does it have your seam, your facing turned, top stitched, so you could amass a little bit of a ridge right here. The key to that is to raise up the edges, right? You don't want to sew through that. So you're going to create like a little jig in the front that levels out with that hump.
And it's something we're not sewing it, we're just using it for a height adjustment.
Right. We're just using it so that the foot thinks everything is flat. That's what we are thinking, right? All right. So.
And then Joanne had a good comment that she likes using embroidery thread as a substitute whenever, like for silk thread. And you're like, my thinking, Joanne, too, is like if I'm sewing on a shiny fabric, I want my thread to be shiny. And that way, so if I'm doing a buttonhole and like a silk look blouse or rayon, I may use machine embroidery thread to sew that way.
Right. And 99% of machine embroidery thread now is polyester.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I'll tell you a quick story. Had this lady come in with a swatch of green fabric. and it was shiny fabric. I was a brand new shop owner. I didn't ask, what are you making? What are you not making? I didn't go there. And she picked out 4 spools of sulky thread that matched. Well, back in the day, sulky was rayon. And guess what? She made a prom dress. And guess what? The zipper popped, the seams popped, everything popped. And she totally blamed me. And I was in tears. And I'm like, I didn't know what you were sewing. You didn't say, I didn't know you weren't embroidering, or you seem to know anyhow. So now I always ask, what are you making? Before I sell thread, what are you making? Let's find the right thread.
But if I'm working with silk, actually, I'll sew it up with the right embroidery thread, because I'd rather the seam to pop than my fabric rip.
Well, that's because you're you,
Yeah,
right? If you are just grandma whipping up a prom dress and you don't
you
know
don't
the
trust
difference, you don't trust
yeah.
it, right? So putting in a zipper, I would not trust that for my construction thread.
Yeah.
So top stitching and roll hemming, that's a whole different situation.
However, but if you're me.
But if you're Jim, you can do your own thing. All right. So
how do we cut them open?
Let's cut them open. There's a couple of different ways to cut these buttonholes open. So let's take a peek over here. Okay. So the first thing is a buttonhole knife. Old school. Do they still make them, Jim? I think they do.
I think, but they're harder to find.
They're hard to find, and it's always been an apple.
I would say probably like your local machine dealer may carry them.
And I think Clover makes one now that has a little cutting mat. They don't make the wooden apple anymore.
Yeah, I think they've gone to cutting mats instead.
Cutting mat. So this is a wedge, a very sharp, like cut your finger off kind of wedge. And you lay your buttonhole down. I'll do this one because it's corded. And this is what's tricky. And see here that width in my machine adjustment? That is a very tight buttonhole to me, right? Not a whole lot of room. So you're going to lay your wedge down, and you're going to make sure when you stand it up, you're right in the middle. And you're just going to apply pressure. And apply pressure. And there's your buttonhole. And there's your corded buttonhole. And that is going nowhere. Like nowhere. Those of us who use a seam ripper have gone and gone right through it. So I take a pin and I put it right before my final bar tack, just like that. So now when I'm seam rippering, there is no chance. I can't even cut through this denim with a zimmer.
That's
time for a new seam ripper. There's no chance I'm making a mess because I'm not. There's no way it's going to cut through the end of that.
Yeah.
Right. So you just have to be super careful when you're cutting your buttonholes open. So anybody have any?
And I'm going to add one thing to that.
Add lots of things, Jim.
Okay. And I like to put like a fray preventative on it. Yep. And there's all different, like fray check, fray stop, fray whatever. And I don't follow the directions, as you know, I don't usually.
I understand that totally.
Because if you read the directions, they'll say apply to the cut edges to prevent fraying. They should add any more, because when your fabric is taut, the fibers are together. But as soon as you cut that buttonhole open, they're relaxed. And then when you apply the seam seal into it, it keeps them open like that. So I like to apply the seam seal before I cut my buttonhole. Let it dry and then cut it, and my buttonhole always looks perfect.
That is a great idea.
So a little bit in the front, turn it over, a little bit in the back.
Great. So a lot of things like the pin thing comes from
trial and error and doing it.
Screwing up because the buttonhole is the end game. You are done.
And if you slice through that, you have to replace the whole top.
The whole thing is benuts.
Toast.
There's no other way.
I learned a new word today.
You learned a new word. That was from my friend Harry. He's a dealer in Somerset, and I loved him. And he had the best.
Harry was great.
He had the best words. Fenutzt was done. And I have to say, when he passed away, it's kind of sad. He just passed away a couple months ago. He had a double lung transplant, 15, 20 years ago. And I remember going to see him 2 days after his transplant, and he looked amazing. So when Ed was scheduled for his heart transplant, I just thought, okay, Harry it was so good. Yeah. And I think, okay, we're going to do this. And so it was perfect. But he always used the word fenutzt. So when he passed away, on the flower card I sent, we're fenutzt. And the whole family thought it was super funny. He was a super funny guy because you had to know him to love him. But he taught me a couple funny words along the way.
You never said that in front of me.
Yeah, I know. Fenutzt. It was good.
I like that.
Yeah. All right, you gotta bring Joanne's comment up. I
Yeah.
can't read it from over here. I had an appointment with the eye doctor in a couple weeks. I cut through the bottom button of phone school. Oh no. Oh my gosh, Joanne,
you only do that one time.
that is tragic. And thank God there was a weaver. I don't know if I
Yeah.
could find a weaver at this point that could even do that. I've seen these little tiny looms they're selling now that you can, like, if you have like a wool tweed or something, you need to fix,
to
like a
fix the
moth
hole.
hole or something.
Wow.
Yeah, I know that's not good. So yeah, thanks for the freight check. Pin. So go ahead.
I
You
don't.
answer
I
it.
don't remember.
Freight check. I use Freight Block now. Freight check was
Okay.
old school, like the original OG.
Yeah.
Right.
The creator of it all. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just don't use something like a.
And I think it also has to deal with the fibers you're working with, because I think some may react differently because of also the chemicals they put in the fabric to make it look pretty on the bolt.
Right. When Ed owned his ambulance business and the uniforms were this god awful polyester and they barely sewed the buttons on, and he had like 30 employees and they were all men. So I think all I did was sew on buttons. And one day it hit me, I am going to fix this right now. And I turned the shirts inside out, and where I sewed the buttons on, I took clear fingernail polish and I coated those threads.
Mhm.
I did not have to sew on another button until something like a button broke or something like
it's
that.
You coated it in
So,
plastic.
yeah, absolutely. So that's my tip. Like if you have someone who wears uniforms, a mechanic or like a paramedic or something, is always in these uniforms, and they're always this bizarre polyester fabric, so they can wash. Oh, get the buttonhole. Oh, she posted a link.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, I don't even know if I even have them at the store. Actually, I don't think so.
Well, those are the items here that as soon as you get them in, they're gone again.
I don't know. I don't know about buttonhole cutters. We'll call that. That's a tough call, Jim. All right.
Now we'll get a run on them now.
Yes. So at 1:00, I'm coming back live just on the Amy Sews Facebook page. If you're a box subscriber, tea towel, serger, scan and cut, I'm just checking in with everybody because I leave next week for the 2 sewing cruises. Jim will be here for the
Stuck with me
box class. It's okay. You're in good hands with Jim in the serger class. I'm not worried about that whatsoever. So pop back in at 1:00 if you want to see
Eastern time.
Or you have Eastern, yes. If you have questions on your box or anything going on, they're shipping. Serger boxes are shipping
as we speak.
Yeah, they're taping them in the back. Those of you who joined the serger box, your free gift is on there. Your little organizer, your little silicone organizer is in your.
Oh, nice.
I know. So if you want to join the scan and cut box, I hope I'm saying this right, because if not, the scan and cut box is open now. So if you want to jump in and join, it's a great project for June.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm hanging out with my girl Joanne at the end of the month.
Perfect.
And I'm gonna finish the project there. I know it's a little close call for you, but we'll get it done. But if you like the scan and cut, want to join us with the scan and cut box, it's now open. You can join class only, or you can get the class and the box. And then the tea towel of the month is the current is the 2 can right here.
Yeah.
The pineapple goes out June.
That's from June. Well,
no. That was April. The
so
bird was April.
It'll
be the May one. You can jump in there and join that as well. You get the fabric, the tea towel, the traceable pattern pieces if you don't have a cutter, the digital cutter files, and embroidery files in all formats for $24.95 a month.
Nice.
It's a bargain.
And one question: the 1:00, is that going to be recorded?
It'll just be live on Facebook. It'll be there for 30 days.
So you can watch.
You can just go back and watch. And what is Ed saying here? Oh, Ed posted the link to join the scan and cut. So I did it right. I did it right. All right, everybody. Have a terrific Monday. Jim will be here while I'm gone. If you have any questions, support at Amy Sews with a box, and then adbachman@comcast.net. If you have any generic questions, and they will be pushed off to Jim, PJ,
and Nancy wants an explanation of the scan and cut subscription.
So the scan and cut subscription. So the mix and match flowers behind us. So we do. Okay. So you may not like the project. You may love the process. The box we did April. No.
Frame?
Yes, the frame. Jim still has a frame. It is about doing direct cut on your scan and cut. So we sent you printable images, you cut them out and then turned them into a shadow box. So It was about cutting chipboard and making a 3D shadow box and cutting out these ladies, which has nothing to do with anything except it's about direct cut. How to cut out, oh, she has a flower in her hair. How to cut out directly from paper, directly onto your pattern, directly onto your fabric. I went over how to fussy cut fabric, right? So that was just a dimensional project we did. The next coming box is all about offset, creating offsets, what to do with offsets, whether you're an English paper piecer, whether you're a quilter, whether you're a crafter. So it's all about the process, not about the project. So the stuff I give you, you may open the box and go, what in the pea picking daylights am I doing with that? And so you're going to I am never, we got this. I am never making that. But I was so excited to learn how to cut everything out with direct cuts. So we try to put a project.
And then we had another example to show what you can do after you learn how to do it.
After you learn how to do it, right?
So this is like with faux crocodile.
Faux crocodile. So that's where we're at. So Nancy, the box has weird stuff in it every month. There's always a goodie in there of some sort, and that has to do with the class, like a notion or a product or something. And then the pieces to make what we're talking about.
Thank you, Joanne.
So that's okay.
Unbiased opinion.
Unbiased opinion, yeah. So anyhow, but you can just do class only if you want to test us out, right? You can join class only anytime.
It's kind of the difference where you get, if you get the box subscription, you get all the lessons, all the handouts and everything, and all the stuff to make the project, or you can just have the lesson and the handouts.
Right. You get a cut file, you get a PDF file like of what we did. And then a lot of times the things that are in the box are weird things that you just may not be able to go to a craft store and pick up, whether it's chipboard, faux crocodile, things you need to cut. But we have made the faux crocodile. These were left over from a three like cosmetic bag, tote bag, name holders we did. We have cut cork. It's cutting all substrates. We're trying to do every other month fabric. So next month is fabric. So you kind of get a little bit of everything, right? Because your scan and cut is multi-purpose. We've done writing, we've done cutting, we've done, you name it.
I work with it in the sewing room.
Right, in the sewing room, right. It just goes on and on how you can utilize your scan and cut. So that's what it's all about. You can go to amysews.com. I think I put the link in there. And she's getting her first box. Yay! That's exciting. So anyhow, we're good. All right, everybody. Have a terrific day, because the more you know,
the more you'll sew.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.